Okay, I want to kind of summarize this whole event because I think it's really interesting and I have a lot to say about it. So, um, for those of you who are even like a tiny bit familiar, like even remotely familiar with my political content, you're probably aware of the fact that I disagree on foreign policy issues with a lot of lefties because I think their perspective is tainted by a kind of American diabolism, like this incessant and pervasive and all-consuming belief that America is the worst thing in the world, like at an almost like spiritual sense. And as a product of that, like basically all issues can be resolved by finding out which side America is on and then opposing it. And while this has always been a problem for the post-Cold War Western left, I think it's really obvious how big of an issue it is with like the Ukraine war situation, right? That's the big one, isn't it? Because you have a situation where, and I, I understand, there's a kind of a variance in how effective the use of this term is, but essentially an objectively wrong side. And that wrong side is Russia. Like, Russia lied about everything at every level. Like, every element of their messaging at every stage of their invasion of Ukraine has been flagrantly and empirically dishonest, falsifiable, provably wrong, and monstrous. They are committing war crimes, they're targeting civilians, they're bombing out schools, they're torturing POWs, and you still have lefties all over, social media or whatever, acting like Russia is fighting some kind of people's anti-imperialist war against American, brinksmanship, which is insane. I largely consider
Do
these
you
people
like Game of
fascists. I
Thrones
mean,
or
if
at
you're a
least the books
leftist in
over the
name
show?
only, and the only meaningful consequence of your leftism is being like identical to a paid nationalist shill for a fascist TTS, I turned it off. Here, let me refresh the alerts. It probably didn't refresh the cache. There we go. That should work now. Was it a bad dono? I didn't have my thing in. Do you like Game of Thrones or at least the book over the show? I guess we'll respond to that one when I'm not talking about Taiwan. Cache? It's just cash? It's just cash? It's not cache? Oh, thank God. Now I can axe one more vaguely French pronunciation for my lexicon. Cache. There's like a dick in my mouth when I say it, you know? All right, cash. I don't know if I like that any better though. Whatever. Anyway, the sentiment you've seen from a lot of Western lefties has been this one. Like, I stand with Ukraine, crossed out. The United States military industrial complex using Ukrainians to fight their war. Because, it has to be the US that's puppeting this war. There's no way Ukraine has any vested interest in not being conquered by a country that hates them. It doesn't make any sense. Why would Ukraine defend Ukraine? It has to be the Americans. But you see this stuff all over the place. And you also see a weird, like, equivocation. Chomsky's been doing this, too. He essentially has taken Russia's side in this conflict. So has, oh God, the, Corbyn. Corbyn. Yeah. Which is really disappointing. It's almost to the point where I'm happy Corbyn didn't win, because the thought of like a major leftist leader winning and then immediately siding with a fascist government as they invade like a prospective ally of the West would have been so optically bad for leftism that I think it might have actually been worse like for any kind of long-term socialist project than the consequences of Boris Johnson's presidency. And that's saying a lot. I think this is a huge ideological weakness in the part of like Western lefties, like really, really, really bad. So as I say, I think AOC hasn't gone anywhere near as far as Corbyn has when it comes to like the weirdo equivocation. Zizek hasn't. No, Zizek took the right position. Actually, this is amazing. Please tell how Boris Johnson is better. Sure. So Boris Johnson is a worse PM in every conceivable way. However, as a world leader, a prime minister is responsible for being a representative of their ideology. If Corbyn, who is a socialist, had got this massive like socialist victory in the West, like really unprecedented stuff, very, very prominent. And then he had immediately used it to sort of promote a geopolitical framework that would have put him on the side of Russia in this conflict. That would have been, Mike, can you imagine how that would have made leftists look? The Western world has pretty much settled on Russia being the bad guy, with the exception of very far right people and like lefties who are pretending not to be very far right people. Can you imagine how it would look if like the West was all in line on this, and then you had one world leader in the West who wasn't, and it was the leftist? Stuff like that resonates through history, and it makes it way more difficult to convince people that socialists aren't just like salty post-Cold War like Soviet files, like Russophiles. It's like every Red Scare premise verified. Like people are like, oh, socialists just want to, bring back the Cold War, restart the Soviet Union. They just want to, they're traitors to the West. And then you go ahead and do something that's effectively traitorous, in terms of broader geopolitical interest, and like pretty much objectively wrong. Not good. Not good, folks. Not good. Very bad. Not good. Um, I doubt Corbyn would have had the same stance if he couldn't grandstand out of office with no consequences. Maybe. Maybe. Possibly. Perhaps. What? Posada, it's fine. Hold on. AC. But the U.S. has an imperial interest in Ukraine, right? Every country in the world has an interest in every other country in the world, especially the United States, obviously. But that can't be like a catch-all, like, the United States has an interest in a country not being obliterated by a fascist neighbor. Therefore, it's just a U.S. proxy war. That's like a non-falsifiable premise. At any rate, so I've been talking about this for a while. My positions have remained consistent, and now we have a new situation, folks. In Taiwan, basically the exact same situation. It's Ukraine to anti-imperialist boogaloo, and we are the anti-imperialist. So basically, here's the thing. Okay, I'm gonna do a rundown on Taiwanese history. Please, God, do not get your history from me. Okay, I'm gonna do my best though. I'm gonna do my best. Okay, so here's the basic gist. Okay, very, very basic gist. Okay. So first, let's pull up a map, just so we can fully appreciate the geography of the situation. Asia map, all of Asia. We pull that right up. Okay, that map looks like shit. Can we find one? There we go. It doesn't look like shit. Looks like a globe. Very nice. So anyway, here's China. Might notice, very big, very proud, round coast, bulbous. And then right here you have Taiwan. See? Little Taiwan. Not tiny, mind you. I mean, it's a reasonably sized island, but there's Taiwan. So what's the dealio? What's happening? Why the conflict? Well, here's the thing, okay? So approximately 1 trillion years ago, Pacific Islander people settled Taiwan. I'm sure they did really cool stuff there. But our history begins when China decided that they also wanted Taiwan, which I think was around like 1600 or something. Sent over farmers and settlers, built trading posts, Chinese would fight with the Spanish over trading posts there. Everyone wants to get like a good, solid, defensible trading post, somewhere near China, because China has stuff that people want. Crazy, Now the Chinese, the nation of China, has been around for, I think, approximately 8 trillion years. I think it predates Earth. I think that there was like a cloud of cosmic dust orbiting the sun that was Chinese. And then when it coalesced into Earth, like that was sort of the chunk. Yeah, it's been around for a long time. Those dynasties go back. Whew, yeah, it's very, very old. Yeah, the Chinese cosmic dust. The governments change. You have your dynasties. The ROC, the Republic of China, not a good government, folks. Very, very bad. You know what else is bad? Japan. Japan took control of Taiwan God, sometime in the early 20th century, I think. Sometime it was 1895. Okay, very late 19th century then. Something like that, okay? Now Japan at the time was what we know as bad, not good, very bad. I think the Japanese, because they were moving all on over here. They were making waves. The Japanese sent like I think 250,000 or something settlers over to Taiwan because they wanted to make all these places like ethnically Japanese. They didn't just want to like conquer these areas. They wanted to like full on Nazi. Yeah, rising sun. Yeah, so they sent over a lot of people to Taiwan. Now here's a cool thing. The the at the time, of World War II, you had a gamer known as Mao Zedong who was epically rounding up peasant villages for combat against the Republic of China. Doing a good job, by the way. Mao very effective at getting together those peasant farmers. Very good at his job. And interestingly enough, the Mao's revolutionary forces and the Republic of China, they actually stopped fighting with each other to fight off Japan. Isn't that cool? That's a cool lesson right there, Like they're settling who gets to lead China. And then they're like, okay, but we have a bigger issue. We've got to we've got to kick Japan out. And then they kind of did, kind of kicked Japan out. And after World War II ended, they kept fighting. Now, after World War II ended, Mao was truly dabbing on the opposition. The Republic of China was not doing great. So the conflict turned in Mao's favor, and the Republic of China gathered up its people and dipped. They engaged in a tactical retreat to Taiwan. They brought, if I remember correctly, around 2 million people to Taiwan, all just soldiers, bureaucrats, politicians, representatives, just citizenry of the former government moved over to Taiwan. I'm sure they bumped elbows with the people who are already there. They certainly did. Now, then you have 2 Chinas, right? Because Mao, the People's Republic of China, Communist China, takes over China. And the Republic of China, the ROC, which still calls itself officially China, moves over to Taiwan. You have 2 Chinas. For the longest time, until the 70s, I think, 77, the West broadly respected the ROC, Taiwan, as real China. Why are you explaining all this? I thought everyone knows this. Are you not American? I assume you're not American. For a good long while, the West broadly, at least the U.S., it recognized Taiwan, ROC, as the actual state of China, and the People's Republic of China were just gay losers. I think that was the official like foreign policy line with the West. Now, America had a vested interest in maintaining Taiwan's officiality as China. Taiwan, after it sort of became the ROC, it was a one-party authoritarian government, like basically a fascist dictatorship. And it was not doing great. They had a lot of wealth that they stole from China. They kind of yoinked a lot of it and hoarded it all in Taiwan, a lot of national treasure, just kind of a mean thing to do. And America wanted Taiwan to be maintained as the like perceived real China because, of course, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, aka Mainland China, aka Maoland, was communist, right? So obviously the West would want to be like, yeah, we respect the real China right down here, out of China, you know. This change, what was it with Nixon? In what was it, 77? This changed. No, that was after Nixon. When did U.S. recognize one China policy? 72. Why did I think 77? Yeah, Nixon. Yeah. So here's the dealio. China, the People's Republic of China, dabbing pretty hard. We normalized relations with China and acknowledged China's one China policy. So essentially, we bought the Chinese party line and did something that I disagree with. China was saying, hey, listen, okay? There is only one China. It includes Chinese Taipei. That's what they call Taiwan over here. What you're looking at between China and Taiwan is actually an unresolved civil war that we do not want other countries taking sides on by pretending that they're two separate countries, you know? Think of it a little bit like the Confederacy, the Civil War with the United States. Imagine if there were a bunch of other countries that we were allies with that were like trading with the Confederacy and calling it like a separate country, like America too. Of course, America would be like, do not do that. That is not America too. That's not a separate country. That's our country. Stop. Didn't that happen? Yeah, it did happen. Can we please? History is very complicated. Can we please focus and answer the rhetorical question, okay? So here's the real question. Did we like it when they did that? Were we happy? Was the Union like, oh, dude, that's fine. Yeah, right now we are two separate countries, so it's like totally reasonable that you would trade with them. Like, no, of course they didn't like it. It was bad. And China didn't like it that we were doing that with Taiwan. So China adopted the one China policy, not acknowledging Taiwan as a separate nation, but rather as a unresolved civil war. You know, as a different whatever. Now, complicating this is the fact that technically Taiwan is still known as the Republic of China, which means that in a legal sense, even to this day, you know, if you're following the paper trail, Taiwan is still technically making a prescriptive claim about it being the one real China. It's still, you could argue in a way that, depending on how you want to parse the writing, the People's Republic of China and Taiwan are both kind of sort of doing the one China policy, but in the opposite directions. Now, in a practical sense, that's not really the case. China, both the government and the people in China, consider Taiwan to be a part of China. Taiwanese people, it's a lot more complicated. Younger generations of Taiwanese think of themselves as a unique independent country. The majority of Taiwanese people are either satisfied with the status quo or want a long-term movement towards official legal independence. Only a minority of Taiwanese people want reunification with China, and only a very small minority want a rush towards independence, largely because they understand that if they rushed towards independence, it would be military, militarily tenuous. China's been threatening to invade Taiwan for like 70 years, so they're probably a bit frightened of that. It'd be a bit bad. In fact, the only reason why Taiwan exists to this day and hasn't been completely conquered is because of the United States and the West broadly. We kind of muscled in a little bit, you know. We wanted Taiwan to maintain its the real China status, so we protected them a little bit. It's also hard to invade. Yeah, it's not an easy. Islands are tough to invade. Isn't the coast of Taiwan not amenable to invasion? There's something about that. Taiwan would be a difficult, yeah, it'd be a very difficult island nation to conquer. So to sum it all up, you know, to sum everything up, in a legal sense, if you're just looking at the paperwork, both internationally and between China and Taiwan, Taiwan is a part of China. But if you're not a liberal and you don't care about law, Taiwan is obviously its own country. Obviously. Taiwan has its own embassies. Taiwan has its own currency. It has its own legal system. It is not in any way under the jurisdiction of the People's Republic of China. In no sense is Taiwan not a country. Literally, in every way you would define a country outside official recognition, Taiwan is a separate country. The people of Taiwan overwhelmingly do not want to be subservient to China. It's a settled question, as far as I'm concerned. International recognition is not a stable way of understanding whether or not a country is real, because if it was, the People's Republic of China was just West Taiwan until 72. It like when tankies are like, well, because the world recognizes Taiwan as part of China, it's not a separate country. Well, then what about China before Nixon's visit? Because we didn't recognize China. We didn't recognize the PRC as the actual successor state to China. Like, if you actually want to go off of like legalese to determine whether or not a totally separate and autonomous country is its own country, silly. They're also not, in a practical sense, in an immediate civil war. There is an ongoing conflict between Taiwan and China, but it's not an open fire conflict. It's like North and South Korea. Very high tensions, but not, it's not like a like the soldiers are running out there to die every day. Thank God. Final pointers. Economy. Taiwan is based, and China is cringe. See, Taiwan was like a military dictatorship for until the 80s, I think. But they underwent a period of rapid economic and social development. And as a product of that, I think Taiwan's the only country in all of Asia that recognizes gay marriage, right? Well, Southeast Asia. Asia's a big continent. They're a democracy. In terms of their GDP per capita, they're on par, I think, with some Western European countries, like 5 to 6 times higher than the GDP per capita of China. And they're also a world leader in microchips. They, where all them 3090s are coming from. In terms of very like high tech computer equipment, they are rolling with it. In fact, Taiwan is so central to microchip production that semiconductors, that any invasion of Taiwan would actually lead to like a global crisis in terms of electronics production. We have really centralized our electronics production in Taiwan, like to a problematic degree. The world wants China to keep their hands off Taiwan because I mean that would cause real problems. That would cause significant problems. Huge, huge, huge problems. Oh, and China wants those factories. Absolutely. Vaush, they locked their chip workers in factories during COVID. Yeah. Yeah, that's bad. Don't do this thing where because I say a country is better than another country, I'm saying that there's nothing wrong with the country. Can't believe Vasha said drones are good. True. One natural disaster in Taiwan can cause a global computer chip shortage. Yeah, it's kind of an issue. Kind of an issue. Should probably, decentralize that a little bit. So anyway, does everyone understand the basics? Like all of the the basic historical forces leading up to this point? The world we live in right now is one in which officially, on paper, everyone treats Taiwan like Chinese Taipei, a in conflict subsidiary of the People's Republic of China, but in reality is a separate country in like every conceivable sense. America has long held kind of a internal inconsistency in their policy and that they're willing to officially legally respect China's claim to Chinese Taipei. But at the same time, we clearly like do care about Taiwan. It's a messy situation. Whatever the case may be, China has absolutely no right to invade Taiwan. China has been a bully for 70 years. They have been constantly threatening invasion. I do think that the People's Republic of China would have had a good pretext for invading Taiwan back in the 50s, like right after the Civil War ended. I think that would have been a morally acceptable time um, for them to do that because that would have been a continuation of an existing war. But Taiwan has had 70 years to grow and develop as its own separate country. Past a certain point, you can't pretend it's like an ongoing conflict that you're just settling. Past a point, you have to let bygones be bygones and allow that country to just exist separately. You know? You haven't explained why Taiwanese people have their own identity now. Barandi, wait, hold on. I think this person is like incredibly salty. Hold on. We have an agent of Chinese media in chat. There are plenty of polls on the Taiwanese people's sense of perception and like self-identity and stuff like that. And overwhelmingly, it's like there's just no justification for Chinese invasion. At the time, it wasn't seen as two separate countries. USA ROC was seen as the only legit gov of China. Wait, didn't I say that? In a few months, we'll see who's coping. China just banned sand exports to Taiwan. Oh, this person is insane. Wait, so Taiwan only exists now because of American imperialism? The world only exists because of American imperialism. You exist because we allow it, and when you die, it will be because we demand it. The sun rises in the morning because US imperialism demands it. We all understand the historical forces here, right? Now we can talk about the actual news. Let's talk about the actual news, huh? The actual news. Do we remember this lovely video? I'm not going to play it again. Yeah, that lovely news. So basically, Pelosi had a trip scheduled to Taiwan that China immediately flipped the fuck out over. It's the Pelosi is the highest official in like 25 years to visit Taiwan. You know, Speaker of the House, very high up on the totem pole here in the States, and China hates this because it's a implicit endorsement of Taiwanese sovereignty, which it totally is. You know, and as a product of this, China's been losing their mind. There was a Taiwanese. My God, gotta finish my coffee, man. There was a Chinese media official who said something like, presumably hoping for a pay raise, said something like, "Well, if Pelosi doesn't stop, then we'll have to forcibly expel her, maybe even shoot her down or some shit like that." It got deleted off Twitter, you know, whatever. It was just some media official, not an official Chinese policy. I know that guy's like, you know, sucking G cock and like hoping for the good boy points that'll get him the, you know, the Nuggy Vault of the Forbidden Temple Nuggy Vault or some shit. She's literally number 3 in our order session. Yeah, it's pretty high up there. That exceptionally stupid behavior aside, media officials and state media official or some independent journal, state media official. There are no, what is a Chinese independent journal? Buddy, if you're doing journalism in China, you're an operative of the state. You don't get, you only get so many career options there. Independent journal in China. I swear, you crazy cats, you goofy goobers. Anyway, here's an official statement from the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the PRC. If you want, you can kind of like imagine like a transparent PNG of a crying soy jack behind it. On the 2nd of August, in disregard of China's strong opposition and serious representations, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi visited China's Taiwan region. This is a serious violation of the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques. It has a severe impact on the political foundation of China-U.S. relations and seriously infringes on China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Okay. Now, keep in mind, all this is a visit from a dignitary, by the way. This is literally just Pelosi taking a flight over. I don't think this represents a violation of the treaty. It might. If it does, I don't care. But I don't think it does. It's just soy jack crime. It gravely undermines peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and sends a seriously wrong signal to the separatist forces for Taiwan independence. China firmly opposes and sternly condemns this and has made serious remark and strong protest in the United States. There is but one China in the world. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory, and the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. This has been clearly recognized in the UN since 71, founding of People's Republic of China in 49. 181 countries have established diplomatic relations with China on the basis of the One China principle. The One China principle is a universal consensus of the international community and a basic norm in international relations. It goes on like this for a while. They're very, very mad. Just from visiting on a plane flight. This person has been all over my media feed because she will not shut the fuck up. The US is the provocateur, and China is the victim. The US side colluded with Taiwan and made provocations first, whereas China's been compelled to act in self-defense. Literally just Pelosi visiting on a plane. That's literally it. And meanwhile, Chinese state officials are threatening to shoot down our Speaker of the House and are continuing to posture and threaten invasion of Taiwan. Like in response to Pelosi's visit, they scheduled 6 live fire exercises surrounding the island of Taiwan, one of which is so close that the people of Taiwan will be able to see explosions off their beach. So the extremely concerned and very sovereignty violated Chinese, who are incredibly threatened by the plane visit, are now surrounding Taiwan with live fire exercises. I mean, yeah, it's a fucking joke. China's repeatedly made clear firm opposition to the visit, but the U.S. side apparently refused to take the message. That's why China was forced to speak to them in a way and with the language they can understand. The U.S. has reneged on its commitments, openly played with fire, and pitted itself against 1.4 billion Chinese people. None of this will end well. Essentially, it's crybullying. That's really the only term for it, right? China wants to invade a sovereign nation. They are so desperate and so like fragile over it that they will, threaten invasion for 70 years, and one plane flight is all it takes for them to start screaming about how they're being victimized by U.S. plane visits. Dude, that language is so propagandized. I mean, it's an authoritarian one-party government where all journalism and all media is controlled by the state. So, yeah, it's, yeah, pretty bad. No socialist should be an ally of China. If there is a person who calls themselves a socialist but also supports China, they are not a socialist. Socialists value freedom. You cannot reconcile these differences. I don't know how accurate this is. I heard part of the reason why China won't do any invasion of Taiwan is because Taiwan is basically all of China's historical art and artifacts. If that's true, that's funny as hell. If that's true, I actually support retroactively the ROC's looting of China as a kind of like cultural hostage situation with the with their art. Oh yeah. So long story short, Giga Chad Pelosi epically owns cringe and brinksmanship pilled Chinese officials. Very good.